Welcome back to the Molloy Twins Podcast. And before we get into today's episode, we'd just like to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Website for Trades.
Websites for Trades is a business that's set up by Clondalkin local Luke Corrigan and aims to provide affordable but profitable services focused on websites, logos, marketing, social media and videography. It's for tradespeople around Ireland looking to get ahead online. And if you'd like to find out more about the business, you can find them through www.websitesfortrades.ie or on Instagram.
And if you're not a tradesperson, but you would still like to avail of these services, then Luke still has you covered, because he also runs serodigital.io, which is a more general agency that can help you with all of the above. You can find them out at www.serodigital.io or on Instagram. Everything will be linked in the description. Welcome back to the Molloy Twins Podcast, and today we're delighted to be joined by one of the most renowned journalists in the country, Nicola Tallant.
Thank you, what an introduction.
Short and sweet. I was going to give you a big one, but I have a lot of deep questions for you today, so I said let's start off nice and smooth. But honestly, before we get into it, I just want to say thanks for coming on, because on a personal level, like, I've been reading your stuff for years. I've always found the topic of Irish crime really interesting, and you've always been one of the people at the forefront of that. So on a personal level, it really is an honour to be here across me today.
Very
so
glad
thanks
to
for
be
coming.
here. Thanks a million for asking me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. We'll start off with some quick fire questions to warm us up before we get into the meat and bones of it. My first question for you: if you could be a fly on the wall to follow around any criminal, past or present, who would it be?
George Mitchell.
George Mitchell.
The Penguin.
Penguin.
Interesting.
He would be sort of like, he's a very secretive guy, and I think he's actually almost bigger than Christy Kinahan Sr.
Right.
Same era, came out of the same place, and we know so little about him. He's going to be my next project anyway.
I love it.
Yeah.
Is he still alive or?
Oh, yeah.
He is? Oh.
Yeah.
I have a question about him
I
later
tracked
on.
him down a couple of years ago in Germany, which was a mad sort of a experience. But yeah, we can come back to him if you want. But he's definitely on the radar next.
I'm intrigued already.
Yeah. She sells it well.
She does, yeah. Love it. For you, Nicola, obviously being in such an intense line of work, let's call it, what do you like to do to switch off or to take some downtime?
I suppose everything everyone else does, you know. I would spend time at home. I'll drink too much wine, probably.
Nice, yeah,
Hang out with my mates. Love travelling. Love going away somewhere. Love the States, you know. Different places. I love city breaks. I mean, if I could, I'd love to just travel for a year. I never did that, you see.
Yeah.
When I was coming out of college or going into college, there was only one course in journalism in the whole country, and it was 2 years. And you were like, I was 17 when I left school, so I was 19 and I was out working. And a lot of friends of mine would have gone to college and done degrees and stuff, and they all did that year in Australia or whatever. So that would be something maybe I'll do backwards, like everything else. Yeah. The next few years now, I'll take a year off and do the, you know. I mean, I've been loads of places, and I've been loads of places with my job that you wouldn't probably not necessarily go. But I'd love to just plan a big, huge trip across the world. Although it's a bit dangerous everywhere now, isn't it?
Dangerous and expensive.
Yeah. Doesn't look good with Israel and...
I know, actually, what's going on.
Our last episode was with a specialist on the Israel-Palestine stuff, and it's even grimmer than I initially thought. So.
Well, I mean, I sat down there this evening before I came over here, and I was reading about, you know, this, like, what is coming. There's a lot of talk of war, isn't there?
Yeah,
and everything.
proper World War III stuff. Yeah.
We might be happy to live on this cold, windy island after all.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
Next quick fire question. You've obviously wrote a lot of books at this point: The Witness, Clash of the Clans, your most recent one, Cocaine Cowboys. Which one of everything you've written has been the most enjoyable project to work on?
I suppose the most valuable one has been, I don't mean financially, has been The Witness.
Okay.
Because it sort of, I think, empowered Joey O'Callaghan. He was so nervous about that coming out, that how he was going to be taken. Everyone thought he was a rat. And I was like, how could anyone think you're a rat if they know what you went through? And he was like, you just don't understand my world kind of thing. And then it came out, and he just got so much positive response to it. People he hadn't spoken to in a long time got in touch, sometimes through email, through me or whatever. Everybody just thought he was a hero. So that was brilliant.
Yeah.
You know? The rest of the stuff is you know, mainly about people that I don't spend time with as such, or I don't know. But Joey's a great guy. Like, we're still very much in touch. And of course, then I went on to a podcast, and you know, the option rights have been sold on. So hopefully there'll be another. Yeah. So that was a great one.
Yeah, nice.
Beautiful. As an author yourself, do you have any books, not that you've written, but books that you personally love or enjoy? Or
I'm
recommend to
such a
people?
bad reader in recent
Really?
years, yeah. I used to kind of feel I read a lot. And then I don't know, I'd scroll on TikTok at night for about an hour and a half.
yeah.
Stupid videos of Jack Russell dogs, the usual. I don't know whether I read so much for work that it's no longer
It's a
much of
chore.
an enjoyment.
Yeah.
Now, I did read a book recently and I was quite glad to get to the end of it and to enjoy it. And I'm hoping to go back to, of course, I read like lots of crime stuff.
Of course, naturally, yeah.
Lots of true crime stuff. Sometimes when you get something completely off field, like there was some book I was reading now, it's very famous and I can't remember the name of it, but it's like set back in, ancient times. And
Okay.
I just think that's what really is a relaxant, isn't it? That takes you completely out of the real world. So I have to get reading more.
Yeah, more fiction. Nice. Last quick fire question for me. If you had to write a book on any other topic in the world except crime,
Oh, God.
what topic would you choose?
God. That's a really... what topic would I choose? Oh, do you know what I would probably write a book on? Okay. Yeah, and I've just already mentioned them. I sound like I'm obsessed now, but Jack Russell dogs.
Really?
Find them very intriguing little characters. I have one now, you see.
Yeah, we used to
Yeah.
have a miniature.
Yeah, they have
Did
a specific
you?
personality.
Yeah, yeah.
Miniature
They have
Jack
a
Russell.
great little personality. And I never thought I'd have a Jack Russell. I always had big dogs.
Okay.
And this little thing arrived and... Oh my God, they're just so you can't stop looking at them and the things they're doing, and they're
Yeah,
so
yeah,
tough. Like Conor McGregor, and like the size of my foot practically. He's a little miniature, my guy, as well, but they're great. So, delve into their background, where they came from, what made them so bad.
No way.
It's kind of, I could bring a lot of my skill set to it, couldn't I?
Good, yeah. Some book that.
In-depth investigation. So we'll do the book on George Mitchell and then the book on the
Yeah,
Jack
the
Russell.
Jack
The
Russell, give them
penguin
a
and the
little
Russells.
nickname.
Nice.
I do have one more
Yeah, you do.
quick fire
Nice.
question just for you, Nicola, and it's in relation, obviously, to the work that you do as a crime reporter, a journalist in the media space. Is there anyone who you look up to or did look up to early on as like a role model or someone who really inspired you?
Loads of people, but that people probably wouldn't know of. When I started out in journalism, there were loads of people in newsrooms, and when you're young and you don't know what the hell you're doing, there's a lot of people that'll take you under their wing. I always try and do that now with younger people that come in, because it's just not so many people around. They used to be really noisy and bustling and scary, like when you go in and you're young and you're afraid to say anything. And so there was good few kind of court reporters would have brought me down to the courts and shown me where to go, because you feel really awkward. You don't know where to sit. You're afraid that you're going to do something wrong and the judge is going to roar at you, all this sort of stuff. So you just need somebody to be nice to you, like. So lots of those. I think more recently, in more recent times, and given that we're podcasting here, Eamon Dunphy was very good to me. I did. I started off with him doing podcasts, like as doing the crime stuff. And I'd only really ever done TV and radio.
Yeah.
So you have to be really stiff and serious,
Yes,
and
yeah.
you stick to what you know and the facts, and it's all alleged, this and that and the other. And I think he just made me relax and kind of have a bit of a laugh. And, look, you have to be careful when you have the laugh and sort of balance that. But he was brilliant. And like, for the age he was one of the first into podcasting.
Yeah, he's some character.
Showed us all the
Eamon Dunphy,
way.
the football commentator.
Yeah. The old
Showed
OT.
us all the way. He's crazy. He can come out with anything.
He's-
You've no idea what question he's going to ask you. And he's doing, like, he has his podcast, The Stand, still going. I think he produces 8 or 9 shows a week. And Eamon must be in his late 70s now. Do you know? I think that's amazing.
That's impressive.
But he's really generous to people, and he's really kind with his knowledge and stuff. And of course, then he always gives you this big intro, and you're mortified that, it's all, this amazing crime journalist.
Yeah.
Hard to live up to, but yeah, he's great. So there's loads of people like that.
Unreal.
Eamon
What a
Dunphy.
name.
He may
All
be getting
nice
an email
people.
from us later.
Yeah.
What a character.
Oh yeah, you should definitely have him on. Yeah, he's
That'd be
great.
unreal, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there's so much quality stuff from him over the years. Yeah.
Yeah.
But back to the important topic of discussion, cocaine. I've
Yeah.
just finished Cocaine Cowboys. Impressive read, I have to say. Like, it really chronicled cocaine use in Ireland from, as it says, when it first washed up on Irish shores to the current state today, where, what was the statistic? 1 in 40 people admitted to using it in the last year. And is it the third highest consumption in
That
Europe?
God knows now. We're probably we're really punching. We're really punching. But I mean, you kind of can see it, can you not?
Oh, yeah,
You can see it. And when you talk to people, I think, particularly in rural Ireland and stuff, and they are like, it's everywhere. It's absolutely
Rampant,
everywhere.
yeah.
You know, and like I would have younger people around me as well, and teenagers, and it's all around them, which I find most shocking.
Yeah.
That they, you know, the teenagers are buying it. I don't know what, like, I'm sound like an owl one here, but they're just too young to be
Exposed to that.
Yeah. And
No, I
it's
agree.
like there's too much going on there now, you know.
Yeah.
Every older generation always says that about the next,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
But I mean, just the amount of cocaine that's out there, it's so cheap, and yeah, it's like, you know, when you unravel the story of it, which is what I try to do in Cocaine Cowboys, the same young people are kind of vegans and they're vegetarians, and they, you know, they're very PC, but they don't really want to know the story of cocaine because
Yeah.
it's a nasty story.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask, why did the topic of cocaine, of all the crimes and everything that happens in the world, why did that feel important enough to get a book on it?
I think it's sort of like since about 2000, when I've really been doing proper crime journalism and investigative journalism, it's like cocaine is at the centre of everything. There was a boom just at the turn of the millennium for lots of reasons. The economy was good, huge employment in the country, everybody had money, and it was the first proper, well, ecstasy came before it, but it was a recreational drug. It wasn't a drug that you have a problem with. You know, I suppose the 80s and the beginning of the 90s, which you guys won't remember, but heroin was there. And people who had taken heroin, they were walking around like zombies.
Yeah.
There was a really big shame attached to it. There still is, like when you see people injecting in the city or whatever. And so that wasn't a drug you aspired to use. There was nothing cool about it. Despite a movie called Train Spotting, which kind of was a coming of age movie that was, you know, everybody my age would have seen. But it just, cocaine, you know, it just became this recreational thing. And there was a boom then because all the dealers were not just selling into addicted people, they were selling to wealthy,
Yes.
you know,
yeah.
working people who had money in their pockets, were willing to spend it on that. And the weekend was the boom time for them. So all of a sudden you see in the 2000s, really the last 20 years, just this explosion of young men usually coming into the business. There's room for them and they're making money so quick and they're making a lot of it and they're kind of in and they can't get out then, even if they do want to. It's very difficult to get back out. And they see it like as a job opportunity, as a career prospect. So that's really what's happened over the last 2 decades in Ireland. And we're at a place that we're, you know, one of the leading global users of it.
Yeah. Surprised for such a small nation.
But, you know, we have a problem with addictions and going back to, like, we like our gargle. We're pretty bad with the
it's
alcohol.
well documented that, yeah.
And there's been a lot of alcohol problems as well. As people just, you know, drinking. There's a lot of people with problems with alcohol and generations of that. And I think going back even further, Ireland has so many problems with trauma and those institutional schools and the mother and baby homes. And, you know, the Catholic Church was just horrendous, like what they, you know, what they did to the whole of society. So we are carrying all that. And I think we have this propensity to get, you know, not just have one line, to have 10. We're kind of greedy.
Gluttonous.
We are gluttonous. And then we also like to have fun. And we're very sociable people. And we like to gather and to, you know, get a bit messy and all that. So, yeah, we just are perfect for it, aren't we?
Unfortunately so.
It's a perfect storm, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
And to give some, like, because obviously the thing about cocaine, I think why it's so lucrative is because it has such a long journey to get into Ireland until they get to a point where they can manufacture it here. Would you be able to kind of document what's that journey like from a cocaine plant in a field in Colombia to in a bathroom in rural Kerry? Like, how does it get here?
I mean, that's it. How does it get here? Every way they can think of. Submarines, planes, trains, automobiles, anyway. You know, container ships, absolutely anything. But of course it starts as a leaf and it's picked by very poor labourers. They get paid very little. They bring it down, it's crushed, mixed, turned into the powder, eventually brought down to, again, very kind of impoverished towns where it's sold to the cartels who keep all the money. Because there's really only a small amount of people at the very top of this tree who are making all the money. Most of the people are mid-ranking, living in that sort of violent environment. But once it gets, to the cartels, the likes of the Mexican, the Colombian, the Venezuelans, it's sold then on to the big wholesalers. Now, the big wholesalers are like a Christy Kinahan, and his operation.
Right, yeah.
The big Dutch cartels, and they will ship it in massive big containers. Sometimes they'll pool their resources, their money, to bring in 2 tons of it rather than it makes everything else cheaper. The logistics, they're not shipping it. They're not each paying for the shipping. They're dividing the shipping.
Yeah.
They're dividing the risk. But the minute they land it, you see, through the ports, it was described to me before like if you had a glass ball and you dropped it on the ground and the glass would just go every which direction. And it's so difficult to get it then.
Yeah.
To pick it up.
Okay, right.
So if they don't get the mothership, if they don't get the big load, it lands, it's just distributed in every single different direction. And then they're smaller, they're getting smaller amounts of it. So it's out there.
Yeah.
They might get, if it lands, they might pick up whatever. I mean, I'm just taking this figure off the top of my head, 10% if even.
Yeah. Yeah.
The numbers are ridiculous.
But even the big motherships like the MV Matthew last year in September, the 23rd of September, it came into Irish waters, this ship, and it started behaving a bit strangely. And then there was another fishing vessel that was washed up on a sea bank off Waterford. These 2 guys were rescued off that, and then it was like, there's something going on with this ship. Now, there was obviously intelligence as well, but the Navy stopped it as it was leaving Irish waters, this ship. It was about to offload 2 tons of cocaine, which is, 500 million street value?
Oh, yeah?
But that is only... It was coming from this crowd called the Clan del Golfo, which are a big cartel.
Yeah, like a paramilitary
Grouping.
Where are they based?
Colombia?
They're in Mexico.
Mexico.
Are they? Colombia.
I'm not sure.
Colombia. And they ship 20 tons a month to Europe. So this was like the biggest, haul we'd ever seen in years, and took such an operation and everything, but you're getting like a 10% of what they're doing a month. So we're kind of like, it's like trying to put your finger in the dam, really.
Yeah. It's a great analogy for it. Yeah, we're only scratching the surface.
Literally.
Everything that's going on.
But of course, they're not shipping it for no reason. There's a demand.
Yes.
And that's, there's an open market. They're not stockpiling it. No one's buying it.
Yeah, it's not sitting in a warehouse.
The more they get in, the more is
somewhere.
bought. So, that's the demand problem is the biggest one maybe to try and tackle.
Which nearly makes, and how do you cross that circle?
That's a...
How do you do that? I don't know. You sort of educate, and you hope that people make the connection. You can't really make anyone do anything, but you can make them think.
Yeah. I think the point you made around trauma and dealing with that, like that has to play a role in it.
But that plays a role in addiction.
Addiction overall, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we have to be very sympathetic to people in addiction.
Yeah.
Do we have to give the same sympathy to recreational users who are funding this? Because they're not an addiction. They're just having a good night out. And they usually are middle class people who go home to where they live, which is not in these vast estates that are so troubled by it all.
Yes, yeah.
They can afford to pay for it. They don't have people coming knocking on their door, smashing their windows in, threatening their children. They don't let their children out and wonder, are they going to be asked to carry something? Are they going to be asked to hold something? Are they going to get in trouble? I remember speaking to a woman in Limerick one time, and it was after the McCarthy Dundons had all been broken up, but they were really savage. And she told me that one of the Dundons arrived at her door one day, and her teenage son, who was going through that, gobshitey teenage years, and he was up in the bed, and your man just pushed her aside, went up, got him by the ankles, and brought him out because he wanted him to do something for him, probably hold a gun. And she was helpless looking at her child being taken out. I mean, and something goes wrong, somebody gets killed, and they're put in jail for life. And that's a loss to the family. And so, people who, by and large, can afford to buy a few bags of Coke on a night out don't have to deal with any of that.
No,
And they don't seem to care that goes on.
Yeah, you made a great point earlier as well. Is like sometimes they probably don't even want to know what the reality is behind all of it. It's like 50 quid, 100 quid, whatever it is. They don't see, once that money leaves their hand and goes to the dealer's hand, it's like that's the end of the transaction. They don't see the rest.
And it's like, but sure, everyone's doing it.
Yeah. That old justification.
So well, yeah, and it is, and that's maybe where human beings are a bit like that. But you know, I always think it's a little bit like climate change. I think everybody has to really go, this is a big problem. We just have to do your civic duty or whatever it is. Recycle.
Keep your cans these days and bring them back. Was there, obviously you went into the Cocaine Cowboys with an extensive background in researching crime and cocaine and everything else. Was there anything during the sort of research process for that book that shocked you, or any new revelations that came out of it?
To be honest with you, no. It was just all, it was almost really all I've been doing for the last 20 years was sort of like, but it was putting it all together and telling the whole story, or giving the full picture of it. Do you know, like, even Cocaine Cowboys, I've actually got another book written since then. You're right, you put these books out, you see, and then they're like, it's a year and a half since I wrote that, and how much more, and I'm trying to think, was there anything in Cocaine Cowboys? See, I haven't obviously read it since I handed it to the publisher. I'm sure there was many revelations in it and connections made between people, and I just think the extent of it was quite shocking when I put it all down together. And then also, where's it going next?
That's the question.
Where's it going next?
You mentioned in the book about, I don't know if it was a psychologist or somebody anyway, who was talking about like 60 and 70-year-old men who had never used drugs before coming with cocaine addictions all of a sudden.
I found that so interesting.
Yeah.
That was Dr. Colin O'Gara, who's the head of addiction services in John O'God's. His brother's was a bit of a rugby player.
Ronan.
But nice. He's very nice, Colin, and he's very good at explaining things. And I couldn't believe that. I was like, they're coming with an addiction problem at that age. You kind of think you're through the...
Yeah, when I think of drugs, but especially cocaine, I think like young fellas going out 18 to 25 or whatever. But obviously, it's a much bigger...
Is it any different? Because like there's a larger proportion of young men using cocaine, and then you have these sort of older guys in rural areas who are probably suffering the same insecurities. You know, and maybe it is a crutch for that, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's a crutch for that. And I think that young guys going out, this whole, like, it's tough. Like, it's tough to be even out socialising and the whole dating scene or whatever you'd like to call it. Like, I mean, there's a lot of pressures there, isn't there? A lot of pressures on young guys, and, you know, cocaine just gives them that confidence maybe.
Yeah, it does have that social aspect to it.
Definitely. So I think that's the same thing that's happening all around the country in little pubs where there's probably lonely, maybe they're not lonely, but maybe they're just slightly lacking confidence. Maybe they're bored. And the other point is, whereas before they wouldn't have been able to get it during a night out in their local pub, now they can because there'll be a dealer knocking around. So, you know, a few drinks, you're probably a little bit more likely to go on, give that a go, you know, and that's what's happening,
It does seem to be, I don't know if it's becoming or it is at a stage now where it is more like socially acceptable as a drug.
Totally.
Like, no one bats an eyelid, really.
Yeah. No, not at all. I mean, there's certainly places around town where I've seen people just taking it.
Yeah.
Like, they don't even go into the bathroom.
No.
You know? But again, you see, cocaine has had this really cool image.
Yeah, Godfather.
They do actually do a great job in the movies at like really glorifying it, don't they? Like?
But it's got like, it is the most amazing commodity in the world. It's never had to be, there's no marketing department.
No,
no advertising. And yet it's like got this really super cool image.
You just can't keep enough supply.
You know.
It's
but
funny.
Even going back like to when it started in Miami and all, there was this sort of whole coolness around it. And like when it sort of started trickling in here, first of all, it was seen as the drug just of the wealthy.
Yeah. It did have that image.
Don't think the original Cocaine Cowboys saw its potential properly. I think they thought they had a small market, but one that was going to be able to pay its bills.
High ticket
They weren't going to have to sort of come back next week. They could well afford to take it.
Yeah.
And I think they sort of saw this small market. They didn't see what was going to happen, which was
worldwide
everybody.
potential. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the TV show on Netflix, Griselda?
Yeah, I watched that.
Did you watch that? Yeah, that touched on pieces of that where she kind of took it into the market of all the richer people.
Yeah.
And like,
and she was so unusual because she was a woman in it.
Yeah, a woman in that trade, yeah.
Because usually the women have have a role, and it's just to be on the arm of the man.
Yes, yeah.
Of the dealers, as such. Now, there are some women, though. There are some women, but they're tough. The women tend to be involved in the money laundering.
Yes, yeah.
You know, they'll put money through their bank accounts. They will maybe have companies, little businesses.
Beauticians and stuff like that, yeah.
Exactly. That kind of thing. And, you know, they let that. Now, they're starting to get jailed more and more for that. They used to get away with that.
Okay.
But we're seeing more and more of them through the courts now and being jailed for money laundering. But, there's a few women, but women, I don't know, it's not very gender equal, the whole drug dealing world.
Yeah.
We need to fight for the rights of women.
What's a DEO?
More women dealers.
DEO, yeah, we need to get that in there.
Now, look, community workers would say to me that the women are absolutely there and they're used in the same way. It's sort of the younger one, but I kind of mean at the top of the tree.
Yeah.
You know, there's it's been a very man-heavy world.
In terms of like your overall career, Nicola, getting involved in crime, I was always curious, like, what was it that led you down that path as a 17-year-old going into journalism?
Yeah.
Like, was crime always something that kind of piqued your interest, or was it only as you got into it?
No, I think I was always interested in it, all right, yeah. I was always interested in it. I mean, when I started out in journalism, I would have done anything, any job, any story or whatever, and did plenty that were non-crime related. But, yeah, I was always interested in it. And then when I was probably in my very early 20s and I was working for the Mirror, which we were really kind of like a Dublin office for the London Mirror.
Okay.
So there was only about 3 of us, which was great because we got to, whatever the big story of the day was, you had to go out in it.
All over.
So we were in a bigger kind of a newsroom and you were young, you know, you could be 5 years sitting waiting for a chance to go on these big stories. I did the Gilligan trials. John Gilligan
After
and
Veronica
the gang
Guerin.
after Veronica Guerin was murdered, they fled, and there was a period of time that they were kind of trying to extradite them back, and then they came back and they tried them in the Special Criminal Court, which, you know, we hear everybody involved in gangland and organised crime is in nowadays, but that was the first non-terrorist grouping that was tried in the Special Criminal Court because there was 2 of the gang had gone supergrass, and obviously there was fears that they'd be killed before they could give their evidence. So it was like quite exciting, to be honest with you. You know, you're down in the court and there was snipers all over the buildings and helicopters flying around, and the supergrasses were being brought in these high speed cars, and we were all searched going into the courtroom, and and Gilligan was a real little smart ass sitting over, and he didn't, you know, he's real anti-authority, and but it was really interesting, and the evidence was all about the scale of the gang and how they had pretty much, back then they were talking about he had, within a year or two, he was turning over 20 million, which was probably, so that would have been pounds, so that would have been the equivalent now of probably 40 million within a couple of years.
It's not bad. It's not a bad trajectory.
A long time waiting for podcasting to do that for us, won't
I
we?
tell you, we're in the wrong business.
Yeah. But he was sort of, you know, and he had the equestrian centre and he had the big house, and he'd lived so openly, and, you know, they travelled to Sandy Lane in Barbados and they'd videoed themselves enjoying themselves, the gang, and you know, he was with the girlfriend in Amsterdam when she was shot, and it was everything.
It's like a movie, yeah.
It was like, well, of course it then was
Yeah.
made into a movie, but it was like sitting there going, this is so different to my world. Just found it quite fascinating in a way. And of course, you know, sometimes it's comfortable to be sitting in a courtroom when they're surrounded by prison officers. You can actually properly stare at them, like, without
any retribution.
retribution. You can have a good look at them and whatever. But I did all that stuff, and then I think I can't remember covering anything other than crime after that.
Yeah, you were hooked. Was there any fear or hesitancy to get into crime after Veronica Guerin and that whole situation?
I mean, I remember that happening, and it again felt very distant from me. Like I didn't know her at all, and yeah, I don't know whether I ever thought for a second about that. I'm pretty sure I probably did, you know, but like I was just a name on a page.
Yeah.
Like journalism has changed so much now. Like back when I would have started doing crime journalism, I don't know now if somebody had told me that you were going to be standing on a stage talking about it, you're going to be on telly, you'll be, you know,
doing all this
on your YouTube things, all that. It would have felt like a totally different job, and I don't know whether I would have.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly wouldn't have been comfortable with that, but that's all evolved. So then, like, nobody would have known who I was. I was just a byline, and I think only other journalists read bylines.
Yeah.
Do you know, you had to work hard to get your photo byline. That was another step. Like, you know, you had to have something to say or be a little bit more
well known or whatever.
Or longer in the gig to have your photo byline. And like, sometimes you didn't even get the byline. It was just went into the paper and it was like, oh, you know.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
so you don't have time to think.
I get you. There's almost like a degree of separation between the journalist and the person, whereas nowadays it's just...
Nowadays it's like people stop me on the street nowadays.
Yeah.
They're always very nice usually, like, you know, or they'll stop to... they'll always stop when I'm rushing in the supermarket to tell me their life story. And I'm like, oh, you couldn't just email me, I have to go. But so it's just totally changed, like...
Yeah.
Totally different gig now. I mean, what you're doing, like, we wouldn't have dreamed of doing that, starting out in anything. But you grew up with you grew up with cameras in your faces, taking photographs, all that sort of stuff, you know, videoing yourselves, all that. So we had to learn how to do all that.
You learned the hard way.
It's tough transition to go from just writing to...
It sort of happened slowly. It evolved, like, really, you know. I think I started doing documentaries and presenting maybe about 20 years ago. No, maybe I'm exaggerating that. It might have been 15 or so years ago. And then in the last 10 years, I've been sort of making more documentaries and then doing a lot of radio stuff, you know, just been interviewed about news stories, really. And then the podcasting thing, I think I only started that in 2021.
Okay.
So that's just exploded, like, really. I can't remember what I did before it now. It's just
it's like
seems
life
to be just
before and
podcasting,
after,
podcasting. And you know, you get so used to being relaxed talking with podcasting that, like,
in a more formal setting.
Oh my God. I had an interview recently on the BBC and I just forgot where I was. Like, I just forgot where I was. I was sort of shooting the breeze, like,
kicking your shoes off.
You just forget the formality of radio and stuff. Because podcasting's great, isn't it?
It's just like a chat,
You can meander wherever you want and then come back to your topic, and you've plenty of time.
Yeah, we went on Ireland AM a few months ago, and it's like, right, you're gonna sit here,
so
you
military,
talk,
Like 3 minutes or something.
Yeah. It's like, this is, and like compared to this is what we're used to. It's like you could spend 20 minutes talking about something non-related and then just work your way back to it.
But you see, that's, I think, why people have taken to podcasting, and it's like, if you were listening to the radio during the day and you're interested in crime, you might get a snippet of something that's happened, a little bit of a court case. You might get a decent bit on the news or whatever about something if it was important enough, but you don't get down to the nitty gritty.
No, surface
so then
level.
You can, and I think that's why everybody's so interested in Crime World, because you know, we go over and around and into every little detail of it, and you know, it's all the commuters and people on the move and listening, and you know, do you read newspapers?
Really?
Do you read them on your phones?
Maybe the odd article that comes up if it's something.
But you listen to stuff.
Yeah.
All the time. Constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly.
It's the way the world is going.
Now, I mean, there's always going to be news and there's always going to be that kind of more formal radio stuff, obviously. But for people who are interested in a topic, to be able to go and get what you want
Yeah.
when you
for a
want.
good hour.
An in-depth analysis. Of
Yeah.
it,
For free.
And then you're the expert after it.
Yeah, exactly. You go around telling everyone what you learned. Yeah.
But a point you made there, and something I wanted to ask you, was obviously as your profile has risen, writing books and whatever, encountering certain people, there's obviously a certain level of like threat, whether it's subconscious or there's actual physical threats against you. Is that something in your daily life that is on your mind, or?
No, definitely not in my daily life. But sometimes, like, and most crime correspondents have this, sometimes, you know, somebody will just take against you for whatever reason it is. It's usually something stupid, actually.
I can imagine.
It's usually something really stupid. When I was writing more, it might have been a headline
Yeah.
that, of course, you'd have had nothing to do with, or blaming somebody else here.
the editors is that do the headlines. Yeah.
Or a photograph used. A photograph. You'd be surprised. And we've all been there when a nasty photograph
use a bad
has been
picture,
used.
yeah,
Please kill that. But you know, sometimes then you will come on the receiving end of threats, and they're obviously from serious people.
Operators, yeah.
So there's a number of things, like some of them will make a threat directly to you. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
So that's a bit silly, really, because if you are going to do something, you probably won't tell somebody in an email, or, you know, give them details or whatever. Then there's kind of stuff you might hear yourself, and I would always report that to my liaison officers or whatever, but that is not proper intel. But when they get something that they've picked up somewhere else through their own sources,
Yeah.
and they come and tell you there's a problem, that's the scary ones. And thank God they don't happen too often, but I think everybody I know working in this business has had them.
It's probably like a rite of passage, is it? You're not
It's
a serious
just-
crime journalist.
And like, there's such a mess because, you know, obviously I work for a big company, so, you know, you're not like a victim of crime, because most normal people don't have liaison officers. They don't have
Yeah.
big corporates that will come in and do whatever they have to do over a period of time. So we're very well protected. Like, I mean, threats to journalists have politicians getting on their feet in the Dáil. But there's people out there getting threats all the time, far more serious, and they've nobody, like.
No.
Yeah.
But everybody gets them, and they are just such a cluster. Like, you're just, you know, they're hellish.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They're a pain as well until they sort of abate. They just screw everything up. You just can't carry on like normal. You have to change things up a bit. And
I don't want to push for too much detail. Are you able to give like an example? I'm just genuinely curious.
I actually
myself.
wrote about one that I got, which was probably the worst I've had, which was in the aftermath of the Regency Hotel. And I got a threat directly from the Kinahan organisation, myself and another journalist. And it was just after the Regency. The place was like, the tensions were just so,
I remember.
you could feel it, you know, and everybody was getting threatened. Everybody was getting threatened, and it just needed to settle and calm down. And of course, what had happened, the murder of David Byrne, that happened because an attempt to kill Daniel Kinahan had failed. The Kinahans were going to show who was boss, and they had loads of money, and they were just coming after the Hutch organisation. And they were coming after everybody, and it was just very tense, and it just took a while for that all to settle down. But that was like very unpleasant. You know? Big
Imagine.
organisation like that, knowing your name, let alone.
Oh, yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But it does usually abate. And like, you know, amongst our own small grouping, I suppose, of crime correspondents, and that whenever somebody does get one of those, everybody's texting, it'll be okay. It'll actually be okay. It'll pass. You don't believe that when you're in the middle of it.
Oh, no chance.
But it does, you know. And also, by and large, look, I mean, I don't know the answer to it, but you've a bit of a profile, and you do have the politicians and the protection of the police, and there's only stupid people who would
I get you.
try and push forward. A lot of the time, I would see the bigger danger as being somebody, some young lad out there, opportunistic, walking down the street and walloping me across the head or something.
Wants to make a name.
To be the big man. That would be, I mean, you know, that's just, and you do have to be constantly aware of, you get used to that though. Maybe.
Yeah.
Would you consciously, like, I don't know, change places you might go or avoid certain
Yeah, I would avoid a lot.
things? Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
avoid a lot, and but I don't let it
Control your
dictate
life.
or control my life. And I think probably, you know, as you get a bit older anyway, you're not just sort of, you know, trundling about, landing
true,
into strange...
Looking for a cocaine dealer somewhere.
Exactly, yeah.
Some random lane.
I mean, you know, it would have been a disaster for me if I was younger, but now it's grand.
Yeah.
It's fine. But so just, it would be just a little bit conscious, I suppose. But conscious, subconscious maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just part of,
Yeah, like
you know,
sixth
you just
sense.
keep an eye and
The awareness,
definitely have a sixth sense. I definitely have that. I can't often explain that to people, or they think I'm a bit mental, but I don't know whether it's because of that subconscious thing, but I think we all have a gut, and we all have
intuition.
it. We all have it. And maybe when you're living in a little bit more heightened awareness, you listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I can always tell when I need to leave somewhere, when I need to get out of somebody's company. You know, I can just sense it. Even in situations where there shouldn't be somebody in that company that would be any, but I have on a number of occasions felt the desire to leave, you know, not really being able to explain myself, and sometime later it has become clear that the individual that I was wary of was connected.
Okay.
A number of occasions. And in one situation, I was in the company of some Gardaí, and I just didn't feel there was somebody in their company that nobody knew what was going on, but he was connected to somebody.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
Crooked cop.
there's a look you get as well, and sort of a lot of the time, I think when they're younger, maybe criminals themselves are operating on this heightened sense of paranoia, and they probably should be. And there's a look you get that, you know, that they would see me as one of them, and I'd see them as one of them.
Okay.
As they get older sometimes, and they can mellow a bit and sort of be less like that. But yeah, you just I can tell the look as well, you know. It's just like you're an alien, you're not welcome I mean, they look at, for God's sake, they've fled as well. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure if certain people come into a bar and I'm sat there, they turn on their heels and go, you know. The same as myself. Like,
A few bottles of wine deep, Nicola.
They definitely don't want to be in my company. So
Works both ways.
yeah, it works both ways. It actually does work both ways.
That's funny.
I mean, even when you're going to meet people sometimes and they're, you know, contacts and they're giving information, and like, it took me a while to realise that they were in bigger danger than me.
Yes, yeah.
Way bigger, you know?
Yeah. More to lose.
And it's very jiggy, the whole meeting is all very,
Yeah, I
you
can
know,
imagine.
uncomfortable.
Yeah,
but
sounds like an interesting. Although having spent like lots of time, I'm sure, with people involved in that world, something that I've always, I wouldn't say struggled with, but it's always kind of intrigued me is, I remember watching Narcos, you know, the Netflix documentary, right? And it was a weird dilemma I had, because obviously what Escobar done was terrible. It's like in terms of like what he created and what that led to. But I remember the scene where he's on the rooftops being chased by the police and they shoot him and kill him. It's like, oh, no, don't kill Pablo.
Yeah.
Come on, he's got kids. And like I have this like kind of torn thing where like I know what he does is bad, but he's not a bad person in the sense that like he has a family. Like there's other things. It's not as like black or white.
People aren't black and white, are they? And they have different sides to them, I think. Mm-hmm. And you do see that a lot. And, you know, sometimes you have to remind yourself, this person is in front of me who I'm having a laugh with here. You have to kind of remind yourself what they are well, and what the other side of them is, you know. So yeah, I mean,
it's fascinating.
You can find yourself like having a great crack and laugh and all the rest, and like, oh, Jesus, catch myself.
Just back down to earth. Remember who I'm with, because it's so crazy. It's like, I know that he does terrible things. Like I know all this, but at the same time, it's like you see different sides of people.
You see different sides, yeah.
It's fascinating, yeah. Just
it's interesting, I think, as well, when people can explain. Like some people have a reason they are where they are and why they're doing it.
Yeah,
and the reasons, when you actually get them, you get them.
Like I understand how you ended up here. Yeah.
And then you're in, hard to get out. So whatever. And I think you probably do lose parts of your humanity in it. So, you know, maybe a voice there that was somewhere in the background going, I shouldn't be doing that. I think that just disappears as time goes by, and everything just becomes business. Even murder can become business. But some people who've had opportunities and who could have been anything. And
yes.
I mean, they're not really to be any way understood other than greed.
Yeah. No, I fully understand. Some of the operators in that crime world, though, you think like you have potential, you like what you could have done in the business, legitimate business world. Let's call it.
Well, they are in a business world, and they're running like businesses. Seriously, like they really are. I mean, the bigger they are, they've actually got marketing departments.
You mentioned
not
that,
like in a
yes, as in like they'd reach out to they try to push a certain narrative within the media.
Oh yeah, but I don't mean like they have an office block. They have their marketing
Yeah.
department. They have their Christmas lunch. But people take roles on, and some of the roles are that, you know, and oftentimes maybe you'd be approached, or you know, somebody's looking to meet you to give you information, and it's because they're sent.
Yeah. They're being fed
You
a
know?
certain story. And what's that like? There's so many questions I want to ask.
So weird, that bit of it.
Like when somebody who is involved in a big organised crime group or whatever wants to meet with Nicola Tallant, is it like done through encrypted messaging? Are they emailing you? How
Instagram DM?
Yeah, like, what's that like?
All those ways, actually.
Really, yeah.
Believe it or not, yeah. But yeah, so they come at you every different direction, and of course then sometimes I'm looking to meet them as well. It goes the other way. But if somebody's approaching me with information, before I even get the information from them, I'm not interested in until I can work out what their motive is.
Yes.
And I'd often ask them that straight out. What's your motivation here? And if the explanation is satisfactory, you know, sometimes it'll be a hunker or a lie for a start. And maybe you might need to work it out yourself, and you can work it out yourself through what they're saying. But, you know, you need to know what's motivating this person, because nothing is for free. Nothing is coming for free, or because they think you're good or they like you or
Want to give you a hand?
they want to give you a hand. No. It doesn't work like that. There's always a reason. There's always a kind of quid pro quo. So I think the more experienced maybe you get in that thing, more cynical anyway, because
Yeah.
I might have once thought, oh,
Yeah.
they kind of like me. This guy just wants me to get on well in my career.
Yeah.
But no, don't think that anymore.
Do you find that, like, I'd imagine spending so much time in around those environments, those people, it'd be very easy just to get a completely cynical view of humans and the world in general. But like, for anyone who can't make out, like, you seem quite upbeat, quite positive, able to have a laugh and a joke. And I'm sure there's a time and a place where you put that to the side and step into that world. But like, how do you keep those almost separate and not let it?
Well, I mean, I would sort of be like the same way no matter who I meet. This is the way I am, and sometimes then sometimes people think I'm completely daft, and they're like, "We'll go and talk to someone much more serious than her," or whatever.
Yeah.
But sometimes it works then as well, because it's the same thing, that they have to see what are you going into it as, a stiff journalist with just serious questions to ask, and you're not going to have a bit of light chat. Or, I mean, I wouldn't like somebody like that trying to get any information out of me. When you're trying to get information out of people, you have to give a little as well.
It's a
And you have
relationship,
to,
yeah.
you have to build something, whether that's by having a laugh or having a row. You know, you have to certainly build something before any bit of trust builds. And of course that's important as well. You have to build trust. So often, like, I'd be told something and asked not to use it. It'd be very tempting, but that's my trust. I have to say no, absolutely won't. You obviously also have to be very careful to keep people safe.
Yeah.
That's primary. If somebody is coming to give information, they're in huge danger. Huge danger. So you have to be very careful.
That's a big burden, that.
Yeah, and also, like, you know, you have to be careful that they are in the right frame of mind,
Yeah.
and they're not just off their heads.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of that,
Really, yeah.
a huge amount of that. And, you know, I can just tell, because coke makes people talk. It makes them talk.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And they you know, they feel no risk, and they would be wanting to tell you absolutely everything. And I'm sometimes going, this guy should not be telling me all this for a start. This is a dangerous situation for him. And I just gather, I guess, now I wouldn't run away with that information and use it.
Trust anything of it.
I would wait to see, do they come back again? Are they, look, some people are just using coke all the time, and you do build a relationship or some sort of trust with them.
Yes, yeah.
While they're using, but if they're completely off their nuts and they've taken a Fagari to ring Nicola Tallant and tell her all their deepest, darkest secrets, they can trust me. I don't run away. And
you're gonna be getting blown up now this weekend, Nicola. Everyone coming to you. You like the new confession?
Yeah.
Instead of going to confession, I'll give Nicola a ring.
And it's as well in times of feuding. You have to be very careful as well.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful that you're not being given an incendiary device to let off.
Yes.
And that some piece of information isn't going to get somebody killed.
Yeah,
and they also do this thing, which I'm very wary of, particularly with the Kinahan outfit. They will feed a piece of information through the system to see where it comes out, so as they can test.
Okay.
So they're often testing people.
Who's talking and
who's talking to who. And if somebody isn't sanctioned to talk to you, that definitely could get them killed. So you have to be very careful there. Yeah.
How do you find your way through that web?
Oh, jeez, I don't know.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, no, it's
I'm sure college didn't prepare you for that.
No,
did
it did not. No, that's the streets.
The school of hard knocks.
Again, I think just knowledge, keeping yourself as knowledgeable as possible and as aware as possible of what they're capable of. And certainly, and other organisations do that. If you have somebody giving you a piece of information, really wanting it published, and it's not really making sense, either they're being tested or it's a bit of propaganda that they want out,
Yeah.
So I should just write nothing and say nothing.
Yeah,
and
that's
pass
where
on
it ends.
anything.
Yeah.
Talking myself into that here
Just
now.
go mute.
Yeah. And like as a
Omerta from me.
Yes. I'm not sure how to phrase this question. I'll try my best. As a crime reporter, is your allegiance to the legal system, to the truth of the story, to protecting the person telling you the information? Where do you situate yourself in that whole complicated web?
Yep, it is a complicated web. So if the legal system is wrong, you have to call that out. I think for me in more recent years, what's the most important is to try and gain an understanding of it, of that world, because it's very difficult to get people to talk from it, and most of us are outsiders. Most of us who make decisions are complete outsiders, like politicians and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And mostly people who police it are outsiders. So you're just sort of constantly trying to dig down into the reasons why this is happening. Obviously telling somebody's story is very important. Recognising always the victims, even when, you have to talk to criminals to find out the real information. There's no point really in having witnesses and, proper informants who are accountants and aren't living in that world. You need people out of that world to talk to you. So you have to kind of dirty yourself.
Yeah.
But then come back out of it and work out what it is that's of value to try and parcel into a story or a narrative. I think that the case of Jerry Hutch was very interesting. Here's this veteran criminal, this huge big name in the Irish underworld, and he's on trial for a murder. It's a murder of an individual who was a member of the Kinahan cartel, who was loved by his family and all the rest of it. So you have those factors going on. We're in a courtroom and the state has put together a case against him. They have turned the other accused to go witness. And in front of us is this really bad case.
Awful case.
It was an awful case. And I think that as journalists, because it was a special criminal court, by the way, if it's a court and there's a jury, you can't comment at all while a case is on. You can only report what's said, but you cannot put your opinion in, you can't comment. But in front of a 3-judge, the special criminal court, you've more leeway because you're not going to influence the judges.
Yes,
you know? And so I think as journalists, I thought the Irish journalists really showed their meat in that case because everybody called it out. You know, this evidence is pretty thin. You know, where is the smoking gun here? And as it played out, like that was the state that took that case. You know, the Gardaí obviously investigated it. They gave what they had in a file to the Director of Public Prosecutions, and the Director of Public Prosecutions decided to take a murder charge against Jerry Hutch.
Yeah.
So that was a massive failing by the state. Not by the guards investigating it, but by the state to take that, you know, to take that and the cost of it and everything. And of course then you have this, you know, very significant criminal walking free, walking out of the courts that day. And the Byrne family, the victim's family, are devastated because of the cheers around it all and everything. I mean, they've lost a son. And the chances of them getting justice for him are slimmer and slimmer because of that. I mean, you'd wonder, are they going to go at somebody else? They're going to try and do another trial? That's the second trial that's failed.
Is the second,
so the first one was, there was a tragedy. One of the senior officers died, and
I remember.
I'm just trying to think of the proper first name of it. Was a Patrick Hutch. They entered a null prosequi, which means the state no longer has a case against him. So he left the court and hopped on a motorbike and went off into the distance, and there was no case to answer for him. He's not charged with anything. He's innocent of that. So again, the family had that pressure, I suppose. The Byrne family had that awful pressure of those 2 cases, of those 2 murder trials, and they got nothing out of it, really. They got 2 of Jerry Hutch's co-accused who'd lesser roles, who were kind of drivers. It's something, but it must be hard for them nonetheless. He's left behind 2 daughters and, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't even realise.
But, you know, I thought that was quite an interesting one because we're always accused of taking the side of the guards or taking the side of the state.
As journalists?
As journalists.
Yeah.
When actually, no, hang on a second. We call that one.
Yeah. Why did they go with the... Like, I can't remember the specifics, but like they could have done them for weapons or something like that.
Well, you see, unfortunately, the Director of Public Prosecutions doesn't have to answer for anything that they decide. No. It's part of it, I suppose. It makes sense, really. But so they don't have to answer or explain. So we don't really know why.
Right. Makes sense. I think they were
conspiracies.
Yeah. They were looking for a home run or a big name or whatever. A question I wanted to ask you, I don't want to change topic too much, but I was just fascinated in the book you mentioned about George Mitchell and tracking him down in Germany and chasing him up the street with your baseball cap on. I don't know if you want to tell the full story, but I think you were saying that came off some tip-off that you got from somebody somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
Where do tip-offs normally come from, and have you ever followed a bad tip-off that sent you miles off course?
Oh, I have. That one proved good. That was an interesting one because Mitchell hadn't been seen for about 20 years. He was off the radar. Rumours he was in Morocco and Turkey. He probably was, actually. He was travelling all over the world. But I basically, talk about a movie. Met a contact in the Louvre in Paris.
No way.
It was literally like, you know, one of those kind of spy shows.
Beside the Mona Lisa in a trench coat and a baba.
The eyes of the Mona Lisa, you know. But got information that he was in Germany in this village called Trarbach, which I'd never heard of. It's in the Moselle Valley. Very German. It's hill walking country, so it's all grannies.
Okay.
And, you know, hill walking groups in their gear and their sticks, and they go to bed early.
He's a man of leisure, is he, Mr. Mitchell?
Well, it would just not be a happening town, I can tell you. We had sent a kind of a crew over to see if we could see anything, and they didn't see anything, and I was kind of going, this doesn't sound right. Nothing sounded too right. But I knew he was connected with this very bizarre Dutchman, and I could see from documents that the Dutchman had bought an underground bunker in this place. These are old Cold War bunkers, like literally huge, big underground housing,
Do people like
warehousing.
live in them? No.
People, well, they used to sort of be. They were going to all go there when the world was nuked.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right,
Not all,
yeah.
but the special ones were going to go into them.
Of course. you need
And
to
they
be
used to have
preserved.
operations, but now they're kind of weird. They're all over Europe. There's one actually in. There's one in Ballymena or somewhere like that in Antrim, and I think there's one in the south. So there's a collection of oddities who buy them and live in them. I mean, I'd be claustrophobic.
Yeah, stop.
So
yeah.
the thought of this, big steel doors on them, and
Okay.
yeah, you're deep underground in these things. But anyway, this friend of his, this Dutch guy, had bought one, so I was like, okay. So we went out again, and the information did come good, and we spent a couple of days watching him. I mean, it was just extraordinary. And he was going up and down to the bunker, but mainly meeting his contacts in coffee shops in the town. And I found out subsequently it's because, like myself, he was claustrophobic. So he didn't like going into this bunker. The first time he went in, he ran out of it like a scalded cat, hated it, and swore he'd never go down there again. So he used to meet above ground, obviously, which made it all the easier to photograph him. So anyway, tracked him down, and it was time to kind of approach him one day. And like I don't know what I thought about the penguin. I thought the penguin was, I might have thought because he wore suits or something, those black suits, the white.
Yes, yeah.
It's because of his walk. I've never seen anything like him. I mean, he came up the street and I was standing on a bridge, and it was like a penguin walking up.
Oh, like a waddle kind of side to side.
He was undoubtedly him. Like, it was just undoubtedly him. So I approached him. He told me to fuck off. And it was all very dramatic. There was cameras everywhere, and we videoed him and everything. But
How many views was there?
two of us.
Just 2 years.
But we got what we needed and came home, and it was an incredible story, really. It was an incredible story. And this bunker thing, what were they doing in this bunker? And so subsequently, a couple of, maybe 18 months later, I turned on the telly, and here 600 German police had raided the bunker. And they had set up this huge investigation after realising this little sort of short waddling man from Ireland was actually a major international criminal waddling around their town. So they had seen the story, obviously. They said they were keeping a watching brief over the bunker until then. But they went in and found one of these massive darknet server facilities doing everything in it. And there was a big trial, and a few of them went to jail. And
Was there a Netflix show about this?
there was a Netflix show about
I remember,
it, yeah.
and do you know how I knew this? Because
Yeah.
I was flicking past it one day and I heard a voice. And Nicola's voice is so
Yeah.
distinct. You must have had like a little roll in it, or they took a clip of you
They
speaking
got
about
me
it.
to go out and walk around the place again, and the documentary was like, I suppose there were Germans that made it, and was it for the American market? I don't know.
Okay,
but
yes, yeah.
George Mitchell was part of the story, but the story was all about the cyber bunker
Yes,
and what was
yeah,
in
yeah.
it, and this sideline was this sort of, because Mitchell, of course, had 16 phones tapped during the investigation, and the warrants to get those phones tapped, the German police gave evidence that, like, a huge amount of evidence about his investments, that he was meeting these biker gangs. He was like all over Europe. Like, he's massive, but in the drug business. But he managed to smell a rat during the investigation, killed the phones, and went missing before
Right.
they could get him.
Is he still at large, or?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he's still
You
there.
haven't tracked him down in his.
It's just, everybody's a bit suspicious of him. Like, I mean, are you that lucky all the time? I don't know.
Yeah.
There is something impressive about the ability to keep on evading.
Yes, members of the criminal fraternity would suggest that
he's,
there's anybody who
Is
gets
that
away with
elusive,
things.
yeah.
They always get paranoid and think, oh,
Yeah,
must
true.
be an informant, must be touting, whatever. I don't know, but he's had an incredible career, and he's been got for very little, given what evidence they gave to the court, what he's been about, what he's been at,
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
what they know about him. So.
That's fascinating. That story is obviously so intriguing. Over the last few years in Ireland, the big stories have been centered around the Kinahan Hutch feud and stuff like that. Has there been any stories, let's call it, from the last few years that really stand out for you as being like pivotal, or just really moments from your career that you'll remember, be like, I was alive when this happened?
Or yeah, I have to say, one of my favourite stories I did in recent times was back to the beginning, nearly full circle, to John Gilligan. Because I think all journalists have a bit of a thing against him. Like
they seem to, yeah.
I didn't know Veronica Guerin, I don't claim to, but he sort of came for one of us, you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
So he's a nasty little piece of work, but he got out of jail and he was shot and miraculously survived it, and actually left in the dark of night in a wheelchair, checked himself out of hospital and went into the protection of the McCarthy Dundons, and was moved around halting sites in the UK while he recovered for a year and a bit or whatever. So in the meantime, he appears to have been trying to settle the problem with the Kinahans, who had sent their man to kill him. And he did settle it. So he very confidently then appeared back in Ireland, looked to go on social welfare. You know, he's always being a bit smart. But he was over and back to Spain, and I had been told that they were selling their pub, the Judge's Chambers.
Yeah.
And I was told, why don't you try and buy it? And I was like, yeah, but they'll know me. Oh, okay, I have to think about this now properly. So anyway, I hired these two Russian guys to pose as gangsters, basically. We set up this big, huge undercover operation. And, we rattled up to the pub. I didn't, obviously. I stayed in the background all the time in case they did see me. But on the pub is for sale and a mobile number, right? And the Judge's Chambers was his, it was very kind of tied in with all the Guerin, and, when he was the Mr. Flashy.
Yeah.
That's what he was of his time. So our Russians rang the number and said they were interested in buying the pub. And sure enough, Tracy Gilligan, his daughter, lands down, gives them a tour of the pub. Of course, I had cameras on them. And as she's talking to them, like, she bought it completely. And they had to be Russians. I was told couldn't be any other nationality. Don't send an Irish, don't send. So she totally bought it. But she, in the process of asking them for 450,000 for the pub, she asked them for it in the black money, as in under the counter. And it was all caught on camera. And they were at the time telling the courts in Ireland they were broke, they had no money, they couldn't afford their legal fees, they were fighting the Criminal Assets Bureau. So it was perfect. And obviously having that grainy sort of video stuff was brilliant. But look, it was a small victory. A small victory.
What a story.
But it was kind of good fun as well, I have to say.
I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say you were buzzing with that one, yeah.
So they were good. They were great sort of stories, those big ones to go on. It's always a bit difficult working abroad because you don't have the same safety sort of security stuff. You don't have somebody to pick up the phone to necessarily. We usually would have brought security with us abroad and stuff. So
okay, yeah.
But I just podcast nowadays.
Yeah,
I'm in my kind of retirement, actually.
Yeah.
Talking about my good days, my heydays.
The heydays, yeah. Reminiscing, telling the same stories over.
Yeah, exactly.
Fascinating stuff, though, isn't it?
It's the type of stuff you just want to sit down, chat for hours, endless tea and biscuits, and
I know. Should have brought a bottle of wine.
Yeah. Imagine the stories we get over there.
Unfortunately, I'd say some of your best stories are the ones that you can never write down on pen and paper.
Probably, yeah. They stay in house. I think that's kind of why journalists hang out with journalists, to be able to go over all the details that we can't really go over with other people. I'm sure police are the same, and everybody. Sure, everybody's the same.
That's it. Within the journalist sort of space, is it an area that young people seem to be moving into? I know there's a lot of like trades or a lot of industries that younger people seem to be moving away from. Is your industry, do you see it growing, or is there?
Oh, there's so many young people wanting to get into it. And look, the job has changed since I was there, but there's loads of opportunities in media, and people are coming with such fantastic skill sets just from what they know. I mean, did you teach yourselves podcasting? And
Yeah. Well, obviously you pick up bits from listening to podcasts, whatever, but
but
core pieces.
There's no formal education.
Young people have taught themselves a lot of technical skills that are really useful in media, and there's all sorts of opportunities, you know what I mean? And not everyone wants to go into crime, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, sport is a fantastic job in media to have. You know, there's new kind of roles nowadays. There's these audience editors that watch because of course you can see what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
And what everyone's reading, how much of it they're reading.
Yeah,
how much of it they're listening to.
Yeah, where do they
so
switch
there's a lot
off?
of people who kind of are even kind of in that analysis, and that analysis is really being pushed back to the journalist it focuses your mind on what people really want to hear or listen to or, you know, watch or whatever. So, and look, it's a fantastic world, the media world. It's in flux, it's in turmoil, it's changing. It's like an industrial revolution, but there'll always be journalism. I mean, I just had the best career. I'm sorry, I had. It's like as if I'm talking to her.
It's your retirement
You're making me
speech.
feel so old. But I am having
Present
a
tense.
great career, and I've travelled a lot, and I've done crazy stuff that you just never get to do, and every day has been a joy, really.
Upon reflection.
Upon reflection, and
In hindsight.
I think you get to speak to people in the worst of times and conditions, and brush shoulders, maybe have more formal conversations with people at the height of their game or whatever. Real eye opener. It's real education, like about the world and about what privilege means, I think, as well. So like it's a great job. I mean it's they're not paying very well these days, but I think people who are really good are always going to go up the ladder.
Yeah.
No matter what industry, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah. Do you ever consider a career based on like all your experience and everything you've learned, like
What are you
a
gonna say
criminal
now?
consultant or something like that? You know, help the lad.
someone build a cartel?
I am now.
That could be the new thing for you, Nicola.
I'm thinking about that now, actually. Consultancy is apparently where the big money is. So maybe, I could sort of talk to them about their gender equality stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
How's
Yeah,
your Spanish?
I'll have to learn that. Yeah,
But now,
do that.
one last question that I was curious just to pick your brain on a little bit and see what you see based on all the patterns, and obviously you're well in the know what's happening, is what do you see happening in the Irish crime world over the next, say, 12 months? Anything you expect to see or pop off?
You know, the thing about it is it can go off anywhere at any time. So there's a lot of feuding going on, little brewing feuds and stuff. And small things can just make them explode, and you'll see just devastation, chaos, you know. That's always there. I think people nowadays, the younger guys involved, are less likely to sit down and try and come to a deal. They just don't do it. There used to be mentors. I don't think they're there anymore. I don't know. It's really dog eat dog. It's really violent, and there's just too many firearms out there.
Yeah.
So it's scary stuff. And I say that's scary for people who have kids that they're trying to just get through those bloody 16 to 21, 22
Get them out
years.
and over the other side, yeah.
Do you know, if you can just get them over the other side of that, and all of a sudden, you know, they might want to buy a car, have a girlfriend, think about a proper job, like your brain develops. And when you're 16 and 17, I mean, I was an asshole too, I can tell you then, making stupid decisions. And with all that going on, a stupid decision can be a really dangerous decision, life-changing decision, unfortunately. It's not just a stupid thing anymore. There's just so much temptation there as well. I think the younger brain just wants instant gratification. Doesn't want to wait for something. They just want it now. And the only way to get all those things now are, they see it as the drug business, but they don't think long term. Well, where am I going to be when I'm 30 or 40? Am I going to be here? You know? So, yeah, it's just, it seems to be like the more people, the more demand, the more money that goes into that industry, the more people will be employed and radicalised. The kids are being radicalised, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And we're getting, you know, we're back full employment nearly now again. It's, you know, people don't feel rich, but we are a rich country. When you look abroad and you see, you know, second and third world countries, we are a rich country. And there's just this insatiable appetite for cocaine. So it's just going to be more and more people drawn into the world. Unfortunately, it's a bit grim, isn't it, to end on. Maybe I'll tell you also that we'll sprinkle some fairy dust to make everything okay again.
Yeah, I actually have one more question. I don't know if it will bring a more optimistic answer out of you, but I just couldn't get any more pessimistic on it. We'll see what we can do.
The world is going to end tomorrow.
Any bokers for sale?
But I was reading obviously the book, and in it you mentioned the case of like Kane Mulready Woods, Sean Little, Zach Parker, and I remember like I think Kane, when that happened to him, I was older than him, but with Sean and Zach, I think Sean was 21 and Zach was 23. I was younger than them at the time of that happening. I'm 25 now, so like I've lived longer than they have, and it is kind of frightening to see how young nowadays people are being killed after being caught up in that world. I don't know if you'd even have an answer to this question. What sort of things should we be doing as a nation or at governmental level to stop young people getting caught up in that sort of industry?
I just think you have to just keep pumping the money into the community groups. Do you know, those youth clubs and those people that are out there working, trying to keep them in school, all those things. There's loads of money being pumped into policing it. But, you know, whenever you talk to any of the community groups in areas which you have a greater likelihood of getting into that world than you would if you're living in South County Dublin, you know, they need resources and commitment that those resources are not going to be just there for a year, they'll be there for 10 years. They need to be able to build relationships with these kids, and then, you know, hopefully the ones that get out the other end straight and narrow will come back and help others.
Yes,
You know, I think that's the only answer to it.
Yeah.
You know?
I like it.
Slightly more optimistic.
Nicola, it's been an absolute, honestly, these are one of those conversations that you're like, can we just like lock the door, stay here for the night and keep chatting? But I'll respect your time, I'll let you get home, but thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story about the book. Where can people grab it? Anywhere, I'm assuming?
I got it from
Amazon
shops,
all the good places. Have you got anything else coming up that people should keep an eye out for?
So well, I'll have another book out now. The end of this year.
Any spoilers?
It is around a gangland murder that actually is a tangled web which involves nearly everybody in this country involved in crime coming together.
Oh, nice.
All with their own motivations. They come together.
This sounds like the book to end all the books.
Yeah.
Bringing everyone in.
Yeah, well, it's just another sort of drop in the ocean with it all, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm finishing my last live show, and hopefully that'll be it for a while. Couple of holidays planned.
Lovely.
Hitting Vegas.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
Let the hair down.
a little bit of just a little bit of gambling. I don't have a gambling. I'm lucky now. I always think I'm lucky in loads of ways, and not having a gambling problem. I feel so sorry for anybody with that.
Yeah.
There's a thing on Netflix there at the moment. Like, I just always watch the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Cleaning Up, it's called. And it's about this woman with a gambling problem. And like, every 5 minutes you're going, please don't do that. Please don't do that. No, that's a disaster. Don't do that.
Bad decision.
You're just like so tense with it. Gambling is very destructive, but I don't, thank God. So I'm able to go and, you know, have a little flutter, enjoy
That's what
that.
a gambling addict would say.
I don't have to stop any time.
A few shows and a bit of people watching, because that's what
Yeah.
Vegas is all about.
Yeah.
All the crazies.
Well earned.
Well deserved. Nicola, thank you so much.
Thanks a million. Best of luck with the podcast.
Thanks a million.